Hello, friends. Welcome to our channel, where stories of love and passion unfold. Let's start our exciting journey into the world of human relationships. I am 31 years old, she is 34, and we have been together for almost 9 years, 7 of which we have been married. We have a 6-year-old child. I am not her first husband. Her first husband passed away at a young age. They had known each other since childhood, and she truly loved him. They lived together for about 2 years, and they were happy, but fate had other plans. About 9 years ago, I found out she was suffering from unrequited love for a guy she fell in love with at first sight. This happened a year and a half after her husband's death. Upon meeting him, she felt an immediate attachment, and we will call him Blue Eyes. Nothing came of it. There were a few dates and passionate sex on the first date, which I found out about by accident. At that time, our relationship was already serious. I could stay at her place for several days in a row, bring groceries home, and we would cook together. She often talked about her late husband, often with tears in her eyes, and I felt sorry for her. Sometimes I caught myself feeling jealous of her first husband, and even then, I began to realize that I loved her. I couldn't forgive not the act of betrayal itself, but the fact that she didn't admit it to me. At that time, I didn't try to hold her back, and she justified her actions by saying I wasn't her husband and she had no obligations to me. I agreed with that, but moral principles should have been there. I had never done anything wrong to her, was always there for her when she needed it, and certainly deserved respect. In the end, the next morning, I saw a big poster with the words, "I love you." Maybe it would have been better if I had left a day earlier, but in the future, she would say, "I love you," not only to me. At the beginning of our relationship, we started living together in her rented apartment. Then we moved to a second rented apartment and later bought our own place with a mortgage. This mortgage coincided with my departure from a well-paying job at an international company. I had been working in another city but had already gone through all the interviews for another equally well-paying job. If everything had gone well, just with my salary, we could have easily paid off the 20-year mortgage in a year and a half. When we moved into the new apartment, my wife was already 7 months pregnant. But, as usual, the global crisis affected everyone who was trying their best at that time. Naturally, almost everyone who was striving and taking on these mortgages faced insurmountable difficulties. As a result, I was left in a large, cold apartment, deep in debt without the new job. The position was cancelled due to the crisis. With a pregnant wife, and to add insult to injury, a large fence fell on our first car, a Lada 2109. It was simply a nightmare. It was incredibly tough. Anyway, we managed to get through it all together. I couldn't find a decent job for about 3 years. It was tough with the mortgage. After the birth, she distanced herself significantly from me in terms of intimacy. It became extremely rare. I was often accused of not helping around the house, although for the first 6 months or even more, my wife didn't even know the size of the baby's hat. I took care of absolutely everything. I was even present at the partner delivery to support my wife. She is quite fearful in that regard, but everything went well. Essentially, the household issue arose because I couldn't find a job. My field is very specific: marketing, advertising, business training, and in a small town, there are no such vacancies. That's why I worked all the time, usually for key or international companies. During those 3 crisis years, I worked for my wife in the sense that she was the representative for advertising agencies. 90% of the advertising activities that took place regularly in the city and region were organised by her. I did all the field work. A project would come to her. She would select the staff, write work schedules, handle part of the reports, and manage almost all communication with the office. I trained the staff, supervised on-site, signed contracts, managed the logistics of all advertising materials, and conducted all organisational work on-site. The money we earned together allowed us to pay off the mortgage. As it turned out later, I was a burden to her for over 3 years, realising that she couldn't possibly handle such a massive workload on her own. Instead of paying someone else, it was more advantageous to make it a family business, rather than me taking a low-paying job and spending the whole day there, bringing home pennies. I understood that the issue wasn't just about finances, but about our future in general. Essentially, I wasn't developing in her eyes. She was used to seeing a young, promising, smart guy, and ended up seeing her assistant. Although I understood all the intricacies of the work, I was still an assistant, not a leader or the head of the family. Over time, I managed several long-term projects on my own, earning between $300 to $600 a month. This income allowed us to breathe a bit easier, but the feeling that I had become just a shadow of my wife never left me. We continued to work together as partners, but our mutual understanding increasingly took a back seat. Family responsibilities, parenting duties, and financial difficulties left their mark on our relationship. Life turned into a routine, and the passion that once burned brightly began to fade under the weight of everyday worries. However, despite all the difficulties, I didn't lose hope. I sought new opportunities, studied new technologies and methods to regain my status as an independent professional. I knew that only then could I regain my respect, both in my own eyes and in my wife's. Deep down, I believed that our efforts would not be in vain, and that one day we could break free from this endless race for survival and find true family happiness. It was hard to do my projects and hers, but I had to, because I have a family. She could always help me with my projects, but she almost never did. With such a crazy workload, we lived for 2 more years, and the relationship began to deteriorate. I realized that I no longer suit her in any way, neither as a romantic, nor as a man, nor as a leader, nor as a husband. Simple grey existence ate her completely. Naturally, I was to blame because I did not earn so much money that she could afford to take a vacation from work for 2 weeks, to go to the sea or abroad. I just physically could not take absolutely everything on myself. She motivated it by the fact that I did not have my own job. On one of my anniversaries, my wife gave me a camera. I have always loved photography, but I couldn't afford to buy it. I had a family and a loan. On one of the big projects, I was managing a team of girls. Things got so bad at home in terms of relationships, both physical and moral, that I decided to give myself a moral unloading. I did a photo shoot for these girls. It turned out beautifully, and I got moral pleasure out of the process. Photography has always been more than just a hobby for me. This creative act gave me an opportunity to escape from everyday worries, to plunge into another world full of light and emotions. The girls I worked with became a source of inspiration for me. Their youth and energy filled me with new strength. Meanwhile, things continued to deteriorate at home. Each morning began with reproaches. Each evening, silence heavier than the last. I could feel the crack between us growing wider and wider. She reminded me more and more of how helpless I had become, and it depressed me. Her words dug into my soul, leaving painful wounds that I tried to heal with art, but it wasn't enough. Working with girls, I not only found comfort, but also began to realize my true desires. Each shoot became a little escape from reality, and at some point I began to wonder what was keeping me in this destructive relationship. My heart was reaching for freedom, for the opportunity to be myself, to create and enjoy life. However, I realized that I couldn't just walk away. My responsibility for my family, for my child, for all these years of living together did not allow me to make a hasty decision. I realized that I had to find a way to repair our marriage, or at least try to do so. I started thinking about how I could bring passion and love back into our relationship, how I could become the person she loved again. I decided to talk to her frankly, to tell her my feelings and worries, how hard I was trying and how much it hurt me to see her disappointment. In my heart, I hoped that she would be able to understand and support me, that together we would be able to overcome all the difficulties and find each other again. I realized that I was doing wrong to my family, and, of course, I did not go further than morality. In fact, I wasn't going to go any further. My wife found out about everything. There was a scandal. But As I understand it, she was not particularly upset. Even then, she was disappointed in me. She probably already knew that she didn't love me and that I was not the man of her dreams. Maybe that's just me guessing. Eventually, a restaurant was attached to our apartment on the first floor of a 9-story new building. After a year of war with the owner, he bought the apartment from me at a price that was exactly above market value. Or, rather, I made him do it. The loan was taken care of. Nothing was weighing on our family anymore. I helped my parents to make repairs on their new 1-room apartment on the condition that I live with my family there for a year or 2. I worked like hell, but I got it done by early fall. The family came into a warm, clean and cosy apartment. It remained just to work quietly and not to worry about anything, and just finished collecting money for a new apartment without debts. A year ago, a decent job found me. A high position in a huge company, 600 people in personal subordination, all in my line of work. In the company, I as an employee on a big account, casting 10 people out of 800. Before that, I successfully cast 14 people out of 640. Salary is not space, but there is a serious multi-year perspective. My life slowly started to get better. I could feel my confidence slowly returning. The new job gave me not only financial stability, but also an opportunity for professional growth. I began to notice that my efforts and knowledge were appreciated, and this inspired me to make new achievements. I went to work every morning with a sense of accomplishment. My team respected me, and I strived to be a reliable leader for them. The projects we undertook were ambitious and interesting. I was proud of our achievements, and I saw the company grow through our joint efforts. Things were calmer at home too. We no longer had financial problems, and we could finally afford small pleasures that we could only dream of before. We began to spend more time together, trying to rebuild the ties that seemed lost. My wife was still cold to me, but I hoped that in time our relationship would improve. I began to pay more attention to her, trying to be supportive and caring. We discussed our plans for the future, and it seemed to me that we could overcome all the difficulties and become happy. I realised that I was doing wrong in relation to my family, and, of course, I did not go further than morality. In fact, I was not going to go further. My wife found out about everything. There was a scandal, but, as I understand, she was not particularly upset. Even then, she was disappointed in me. Even then, she knew that I do not love me, and I am not the man of her dreams. Maybe that's just my guess. Eventually, a restaurant was attached to our apartment on the first floor of a 9-story new building. After a year of war with the owner, he bought the apartment from me at a price that was exactly above market value. Or rather, I made him do it. The loan was taken care of, and nothing was pressing on our family anymore. I helped my parents renovate their new studio apartment on the condition that I would live there with my family for a year or 2. I worked like hell, but everything was done by early fall. The family came into a warm, clean and cosy apartment. It remained just to work quietly and not to worry about anything, and just finished collecting money for a new apartment without debts. A year ago, a decent job found me. A high position in a huge company with 600 people under my command, all in my line of work. In the company as an employee, I was on a big account. Casting for this position was successful. I was chosen out of 10 people out of 800. Before that, I successfully passed the auditions of 14 people out of 640. The salary is not space, but there is a serious multi-year perspective. Working for this company was a new page in my life. I felt like I was finally in my place. The team was friendly, the tasks were interesting and challenging. I was able to use all my accumulated experience and knowledge to succeed in my new position. Gradually, I began to feel respect from my colleagues and superiors. This gave me confidence and inspiration. However, despite all the success at work, things at home remained tense. My wife continued to drift away, and the gulf of misunderstanding and mistrust between us was growing. I tried to mend the relationship, but all my efforts seemed futile. She looked at me with a coldness that penetrated to the depths of my soul. In her eyes, I did not see the former warmth and love, only fatigue and disappointment. We had fewer and fewer heart-to-heart talks, and I felt that our paths were drifting apart. Sometimes it seemed to me that we had long been strangers to each other, bound only by shared memories and obligations to the child. At times like this, I wondered whether it was worth it to keep fighting for this marriage, or whether it was better to let go and let each other find their own happiness separately. And then I find out that she is having a virtual affair with an old acquaintance of hers. The affair lasts more than a year, quite a stormy affair with all the elements. A married man, 39 years old, 2 children, who turned out not to be his, from his wife's previous marriage. I hack into all her email accounts and websites, find love correspondence from the last 9 months. Naturally, I am shocked. Next, I'll link the emails to the last year of their lives together. In February, I was 30 years old. My wife organised a celebration, invited all our friends. A week before, there had been a scandal. Firstly, I had 15,000 hryvnias to spare at that time, and I was determined to accumulate funds to buy a new apartment. Secondly, on a subconscious level, I began to notice that something was going on, and realised that the birthday she makes not for me, but for herself. Asked directly if she had anyone, she emphatically replied that she did not, accusing me of ingratitude. In correspondence on the eve of my birthday, she wrote him crazy letters with declarations of love and gave him gifts. Then, in the mail, I found a picture of a gold cross. It is possible that this cross was not addressed to me. On my 30th birthday, I didn't hear a single word of gratitude from my wife for being there for me all this time. As a result, I am again left without free money, but my wife is thanked by everyone for such a wonderful holiday. When we moved into my parents' new apartment, they live across the street. I understood that she didn't want to move, but I didn't understand the reason. Now I suspect that she was already then ready to break off our relationship. After living in the new apartment for a month, she confessed to me that she doesn't love me and never really loved me. It was all about our relationship and nothing else. This confession was a blow to me, but also a relief. Now I knew my hunch was right. Every day turned into a painful realization that my life was built on illusions. We continued to live under the same roof, but our paths diverged completely. She spent a lot of time socializing with her virtual lover, while I tried to concentrate on work and taking care of the baby. Sometimes I wondered what had gone wrong, when exactly our marriage had come apart at the seams. Memories of holding her hand in difficult moments, of laughing and dreaming together, seemed like ghosts of the past, but that ghost was stubborn and wouldn't let me go, despite all the pain. Over time, I began to notice that her gaze no longer had the spark it once had. Instead, there was coldness and indifference. I realised that she was not only disappointed in me, but also in our life together. I became more and more immersed in my work, trying to forget and find some kind of outlet. Another year passed, filled with arguments, misunderstandings, and estrangement. I no longer hoped to rebuild the relationship, but divorce seemed too painful a step. We lived like neighbours, each in our own world, without love or warmth. I knew I had to make a change, but the fear of the unknown held me back. The only thing that felt good that year was sex. Really good. I thought she had less work now and wouldn't mind making love more often. Turns out, it wasn't me or the job. She's been to the sea twice this year, once with the baby and once with a friend abroad. I, of course, was working the whole time. She went abroad, and only on the 4th day she let me know that she was doing well, and she blamed me again. Why am I arguing that the internet in Turkey is expensive, and it is expensive to make calls? I myself realised that she didn't care about me. I can't find another word for it. Naturally, photos from the sea with words about how she dreamed of him and how she was waiting to meet him also flew in love letters. I won't go into details, but all those moral values, all those family photos that I so often took when photographing my beloved family and my beloved wife, flew into circulation. Taking the pictures with the baby out of context, she sent them along with those love letters. Naturally, she was not fully clothed in all the photos. The day before I got to the letters, we had a very long conversation. She never confessed anything to me, said that I was ungrateful and stupid, accused her innocent of sins, cried to me. As a result, I realised that this conversation will not achieve anything. The next day, the apogee of all this was a photo of a rose blossom on my windowsill against the background of my daughter's toy house, with words about how well preserved this rose is, even though it has been standing for 6 days, with what love it was given and so on. At the same time, I know that she does not like roses at all, as she told me repeatedly, and that was the first letter I read. That's how I found all this out. The reaction was uncontrollable. I just kicked her out of the house. The person betrayed all the moral values of the family: love, faith, respect, understanding, lost faith in herself and made her lose faith in me. At that moment, both my mother-in-law and my mother called, as they felt that something was happening. I, in haste, myself not yet fully realising what was happening, told them that my wife was cheating on me and that I was filing for divorce. These words sounded like a thunderclap. My mother and mother-in-law started asking questions, trying to calm me down, but I was adamant. My wife packed her things and left in silence. The house fell into a heavy silence, which was broken only by the crying of the child and my deep sighs. The days following this event were filled with bitterness and reflection. I tried to realise how all this could have happened. Regret and a sense of betrayal overwhelmed me, but at the same time, I was determined to change my life. I knew I had a long road ahead of me to recover and find a new self. I've done a lot of things in my life that I regret. I didn't attend my own father's funeral. He abandoned the family when we were young. I'm the 4th child in the family. It wasn't the best thing I've ever done in my life. In the end, after all the partially experienced shock, rereading all the letters, I realised that she found in him a good conversationalist and a real man to whom she trusted everything innermost that she never trusted me at the same time. She always told me that she valued me for the fact that with me always and about everything can talk, turned out to lie to me at the first opportunity. I understand the meaning of the words. Who betrayed once will betray again. The child after the scandal stayed with me. She went to her brother's rented apartment, realising that I do not want to destroy the family, which unsuccessfully built all 10 years. On the holiday of St. Nicholas, 4 days after the scandal, I gave her a gift with a letter from the guardian angel in the form of a ticket to the hardest night and the happiest morning. A ticket that opens all doors to that night, and that this morning she got to spend with the 2 dearest people in her life. In context, meaning myself and our child, was willing to endure and forgive everything that happened, realising that there was my fault in everything that happened. In the end, she never came. Thus, she subconsciously admitted to me and to herself that we are not the dearest people in her life. Naturally, she was looking for excuses for it, for the fact that I had hurt her, that I had kicked her out, looking for a reason in everything that was going on around her, but not in herself. She never got over herself and her pride. She betrayed us again. I don't know if I did the right thing, but now we are still living together. It had been almost 5 months since it had happened. She still hadn't told me anything, and I didn't feel the need to ask questions, knowing that if I started asking, our relationship wouldn't last. The longer she didn't say anything, the less I wanted a family like this. I've stepped over my pride many times for her because I still love her and our family, or rather I love the family as it used to be, full of respect and trust. The hardest part is not knowing who is next to me, the person who has repented and realised his mistakes, or the one who is waiting for me to fix my faults, and only then will be ready to live with me in dignity. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing, or if I should do anything at all. Today, we are completing our journey into the world of human relations. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our content. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next story.